The human defended the princess, and the queen wants him as hers. The city planet gleamed like a jewel in the vastness of space, its towers stretching high and reflecting light from the setting suns. Elendra was known across the galaxy for its beauty, wealth, and peace, and its royal family, led by Queen Seraphine, was admired for wisdom and fairness. The people loved their princess, Lyra, whose charm and intelligence had made her a symbol of hope for all Elendrans. But that evening, peace would not last. Captain Orion Kane, a human soldier from Earth, stepped lightly on the balcony of the city's defense tower. He was not from Elendra, and most of the Elendrans saw humans as fragile, unpredictable, and ill-suited for serious tasks. Orion had been sent as part of a small diplomatic security unit, assigned to observe and learn from the Elendran military. But unlike the Elendran officers, Orion carried with him the instincts and experience of someone who had faced danger often and survived. He watched the horizon, noticing a faint shimmer in the sky that made his heart tighten. It was too subtle for most sensors, but Orion's human eyes could pick up the movement of something unnatural. The shimmer grew, forming into a fleet of dark, angular ships that darted toward the city at high speed. "Aliens," Orion muttered under his breath, the word foreign and heavy on his tongue. He ran toward the palace, moving faster than most Elendran guards could keep up with. He had trained for years on Earth for unexpected attacks, ambushes, and hostile encounters. But nothing in his experience could have fully prepared him for the sight of Elendra's peaceful city being under attack. Inside the palace, Princess Lyra was finishing a meeting with her advisors. She had been reviewing plans for trade with a neighboring planet when the ground trembled slightly. At first, she thought it was a minor quake, but a series of deep, booming noises followed. The advisors froze. Then the alarms began, a blaring sound that echoed through the marble halls. "Intruders," Lyra whispered. Her heart pounded. She had been trained in diplomacy, strategy, and etiquette, but she had never faced a real battle. Guards rushed to positions, weapons in hand, while the princess's eyes darted toward the balcony where she could see the approaching fleet. At that moment, Orion arrived in the main courtyard. His armor, simple compared to Elendra's elaborate designs, was practical and efficient. He didn't pause to admire the city or its beauty. His focus was sharp, and his mind worked quickly. He assessed the situation. The alien ships were fast, their approach coordinated, and they were armed with energy weapons capable of devastating destruction. If no one acted, the palace and everyone inside would be destroyed within minutes. "Princess Lyra," he called as he ran toward her, "get to the safe chamber, now." Lyra hesitated. She had never met Orion before, yet in his voice she heard urgency and confidence. Something in him inspired trust. She nodded and ran, following the guards to the hidden escape passages known only to the royal family. Orion, meanwhile, turned back toward the open courtyard. The aliens arrived just as he had predicted. Dark ships hovered above, and a squad of armored figures descended rapidly. The Elendran guards tried to fight, but they were outnumbered and unprepared for the sheer aggression of the invaders. Laser fire filled the air, and the scent of ozone burned in Orion's nostrils. But Orion did not hesitate. He moved swiftly, dodging blasts, using the palace structures as cover. His weapons, designed for maximum mobility, allowed him to strike with precision. Each alien that tried to breach the inner halls found himself outmatched by Orion's quick reflexes and tactical decisions. One alien soldier lunged at him with a plasma blade, but Orion sidestepped and used the creature's momentum to throw it into a pillar. Another tried to flank him, but he anticipated the move, knocking it off balance with a swift strike. He was not Elendran, but he was effective. Humans, he knew, often survived because they adapted quickly, thought creatively, and acted with courage even when the odds were against them. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Lyra and the other royal family members moved through secret corridors. The princess's mind raced. She had read about heroic humans in stories from other planets, but she had never seen one in real life. And yet, from the sounds of the battle outside, it was clear someone was holding the invaders at bay. Orion's movements were like a dance of strategy and instinct. He did not just fight. He guided the Elendran guards, giving them commands, repositioning them, and using their strengths against the invaders' weaknesses. Slowly, he began turning the tide. One by one, the aliens fell or retreated. Finally, a massive alien warrior, taller and stronger than the others, appeared. Its armor shimmered with energy, and it advanced toward Orion with terrifying speed. The humans and Elendrins' combined forces seemed insignificant against it, but Orion did not flinch. He studied its movements, noticing a pattern in its attacks. With a precise strike and a well-timed feint, he used the alien's own energy against it, sending the warrior crashing to the ground. The courtyard went silent. The alien fleet, seeing their elite warrior defeated, began retreating into the sky. Within minutes, the city planet of Elendra was safe. Orion, breathing heavily, lowered his weapon. His armor was scorched, and his body was bruised, but he was alive, and Elendra was alive because of him. Princess Lyra emerged from the hidden corridors, accompanied by the Queen's guards. Her eyes widened as she saw Orion standing alone in the courtyard, surrounded by the aftermath of battle. She had never seen such bravery, nor had she imagined that a human could hold his own against a force so powerful. You saved us," she said, her voice trembling with awe. Orion nodded, brushing dirt from his armor. "I did what had to be done, Princess. You're safe. That's what matters." Lyra smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and admiration shining in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you." Orion shrugged, trying to appear casual, though his heart still raced from the battle. "No thanks needed. Just stay safe. That's enough." Word of Orion's heroism spread quickly throughout the palace and into the city. Guards, officials, and citizens alike spoke in hushed tones about the human who had defended the princess. Many were skeptical at first. How could a single human face such danger and win? But when they saw the evidence, the scorched courtyard, the retreating enemy ships, and the princess unharmed, they had no choice but to acknowledge his courage. Queen Seraphine, however, remained unreadable. She observed Orion carefully from the palace tower, her eyes sharp and assessing. Most Elendrins would have dismissed a human, but she saw something different: adaptability, courage, and a mind that could think in unexpected ways. The Queen knew immediately that Orion was not just brave, he was remarkable. And remarkable beings were rare, even in a galaxy filled with wonders. That evening, as the sun finally disappeared and the first stars appeared in the sky, Orion stood in the palace garden, still alert, still cautious. He had won the battle, yes, but he knew that the story was far from over. Aliens would return, perhaps stronger, and the politics of the royal court were more dangerous than any battlefield. But for now, Orion allowed himself a moment of quiet. The princess was safe, the city was intact, and the humans' potential was finally being noticed. Princess Lyra approached him, her curiosity outweighing her fear. You were incredible today," she said softly. "I didn't think anyone could protect me against them, but you did." Orion met her gaze, his expression calm but honest. "Humans survive by facing the impossible, Princess. Sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's training, but mostly it's about not giving up." Lyra studied him, impressed not just by his actions but by his words. I hope I can learn from you," she said quietly. Orion smiled faintly, knowing that this was only the beginning. Humans had survived and thrived for centuries, often underestimated, often dismissed, but always ready to rise to the occasion. And now, on Elendra, they would be noticed. The stars above the palace shimmered, and the city glowed below, unaware of how history had just been rewritten by a single human who refused to fail. The morning sun rose over Elendra, spilling golden light across the palace. The city was alive again, with markets reopening and children running through the streets, unaware of how narrowly they had escaped disaster. Yet within the walls of the royal palace, the air was tense, thick with discussion and concern. Queen Seraphine sat in her private chambers, her posture perfect and her eyes sharp. She watched the sunlight reflect off the palace walls, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the human soldier who had defended her daughter, Orion Kane. Most humans were considered weak by Elendran standards, fragile, unpredictable, and poorly suited for anything beyond simple tasks. Yet Orion had done what Elendran guards, trained for years and armed with the best technology, had struggled to achieve. He had held the line alone against a superior alien force. Seraphine did not often let herself feel surprise. She had ruled Elendra for decades and had seen many wonders and horrors. Yet Orion's actions had sparked something unusual inside her: curiosity, not just about his bravery, but about the human mind itself. How did someone so physically weaker withstand such pressure, think so quickly, and succeed where others failed? She leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled under her chin. "We must meet him," she murmured. Orion had spent the morning inspecting the courtyard, checking for structural damage and lingering hazards. Elendrin guards followed him, respectful but cautious. Many were still shaken from the previous night's attack. Whispers of the human and hero followed him wherever he went. A royal messenger approached, carrying a sealed note with the Queen's insignia. Orion broke the seal and read the message. Captain Kane, you are requested to attend Queen Seraphine in her private chambers. Your presence is required at your earliest convenience. He raised an eyebrow, a mixture of curiosity and caution crossing his face. Humans were often underestimated, and he had learned long ago that being summoned by someone of great authority could mean anything, from a reward to a test or even a trap. Orion straightened his armor, brushed off dust, and made his way toward the Queen's chambers. Guards opened the doors for him without question, and the heavy golden doors closed behind him. Queen Seraphine was waiting, her expression calm but penetrating. She gestured for Orion to stand. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice smooth yet commanding. "You have done something extraordinary. You saved my daughter and my city. For that, you have my gratitude." Orion inclined his head politely. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what I had to do." Seraphine studied him for a long moment, her gaze calculating. "You did more than act. You adapted. You anticipated. You succeeded where our best officers would have struggled, and all of this in a single night." Orion felt a faint twinge of pride but kept his composure. "I've faced danger before. I don't always succeed, but I don't stop trying." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "That is precisely what I find remarkable. Humans are usually seen as fragile and unpredictable, yet you have shown courage, ingenuity, and leadership. You survived because you could think differently. You were not bound by the limitations we often place on ourselves." Orion shifted slightly. "I suppose humans survive because we have to. We adapt, we take risks, and we find solutions even when others doubt we can." Seraphine smiled faintly, a rare and subtle expression. "Indeed, and that is why I want to know more about you. I want to understand how a human mind works in ways that Elendrin minds do not." Orion raised an eyebrow. "You want to study me." "Not study exactly," the Queen said, shaking her head. "I want to test, not just your strength or skill, but your reasoning, your decisions, your approach to problem-solving. I want to see what made you succeed when others failed. Your mind, your courage, it could be invaluable to Elendra." Orion considered her words. This was not a reward or a ceremony. This was a challenge, and he thrived on challenges. "Very well," he said. "I'll do what I can." Over the next few days, Orion found himself drawn into the inner workings of Elendra. He was introduced to military advisors, scientists, and diplomats, all observing him with curiosity. Some were polite, some skeptical, and others openly dismissive. But Orion's calm confidence, his ability to analyze and act quickly, and his courage in the face of even the smallest threats won him respect. Princess Lyra, meanwhile, watched Orion with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. She often visited him during his exercises, asking questions about his tactics and decisions. "How did you know they would attack at that exact moment?" she asked one morning as they walked through the palace gardens. Orion smiled slightly. "I didn't know exactly. But humans have a way of noticing small changes, things others might miss. A shadow, a sound, a shift in energy, it adds up." Lyra considered this. "So it's observation and instinct together?" "Exactly," Orion said. "You can study and plan all you want, but sometimes survival comes down to noticing what no one else does, and acting before it's too late." The princess nodded thoughtfully, realizing that human strength was more than physical. It was mental, emotional, and adaptive. And for the first time, she saw a human not as fragile or weak, but as resourceful, courageous, and capable of greatness. The Queen's tests were not limited to observation. She devised challenges for Orion, designed to evaluate his strategic thinking, moral choices, and adaptability. One morning, she summoned him to a simulation room, a large chamber with holographic projections of a city under attack. "You will lead the defense," she instructed, her tone calm but firm. "Your goal is to protect the civilians and prevent the enemy from taking the central tower. You may use any tactics you deem appropriate." Orion studied the holographic city. The enemy forces were numerous and diverse, each with strengths and weaknesses. The simulations were advanced enough to mimic real consequences. Failures resulted in civilian casualties, structural damage, and enemy advancement. He took a deep breath, thinking carefully. First, we need to understand the enemy. We can't fight blindly. Second, we prioritize civilians and then protect strategic points. Third, we use traps, misdirection, and mobility to balance our numbers. Seraphine observed silently as Orion guided holographic units, made strategic decisions, and adapted to unexpected enemy maneuvers. He remained calm under pressure, considering options others might overlook. Each choice reflected not only intelligence but ingenuity and courage, the very qualities the Queen had hoped to see. When the simulation ended, the holographic enemies were defeated, the city largely unharmed, and the civilians safe. Queen Seraphine's eyes softened slightly, though she remained as calculating as ever. Impressive, Captain Kane. You combine instinct with analysis. That is a rare combination. Most beings rely on one or the other, but you balance both. Orion nodded humbly. I do what I must to succeed. Failure is not an option if lives are at stake. Outside the simulation room, whispers spread among the palace staff. The human was extraordinary, yes, but he was also unafraid to make decisions others would hesitate over. Humans were unpredictable, sometimes reckless, but Orion had proven that unpredictability could also mean brilliance, bravery, and success. Princess Lyra approached Orion later, carrying a small tray of refreshments. You make it look easy, she said, handing him a cup. But I can see it's not. You think about every move, every choice, and still you remain calm. Orion took the cup and smiled faintly. Thinking quickly, observing carefully, acting decisively, that's what humans do. We survive by being aware, by adapting, by never giving up. Calm is part of it, but the mind must stay sharp. Lyra sipped her tea thoughtfully. I hope Elendra learns from you, Orion. I hope we can see humans as you are, strong, clever, and courageous. Orion looked at her and nodded. Then maybe your people will see that humans are not just survivors. We can be allies, protectors, and sometimes even heroes. That evening, the palace corridors were quiet, and the stars above Elendra sparkled in the clear sky. Orion walked alone through the gardens, reflecting on his situation. He had fought, survived, and proven himself, but the Queen's interest suggested that this was only the beginning. There would be more tests, more challenges, and likely more danger. Yet Orion felt ready. Humans had always risen to challenges, often when others doubted them. And now, on Elendra, he would have the chance to show that courage, adaptability, and determination were not just human traits. They were forces capable of changing the course of history. From the shadows of the palace, Queen Seraphine observed him, her expression unreadable. She did not yet trust fully, but she recognized potential. Orion Kane was more than a soldier. He was a symbol of human ingenuity and courage. And Elendra would need both very soon. The day after the simulations, Elendra seemed peaceful once again. The twin suns bathed the city in gentle light, and the people went about their daily lives. Markets bustled, ships glided through the sky, and children played in the courtyards. Yet beneath the surface, the palace was alive with a different kind of energy: tension, curiosity, and anticipation. Orion Kane, still a foreign presence on Elendra, was now recognized throughout the palace. His earlier heroism had made him a subject of admiration among guards and citizens alike. Yet admiration was mixed with suspicion. Humans were unpredictable, and the Queen's interest in him had not gone unnoticed. Some Elendrans whispered that the Queen might be testing him for reasons no one fully understood. Orion did not concern himself with whispers. His focus remained sharp, guided by training, instinct, and the knowledge that trust had to be earned in Elendra as much as it had on the battlefield. Queen Seraphine summoned Orion to the council chambers. The room was vast, with high ceilings, golden chandeliers, and holographic maps projected in the center. Elendran officers, advisors, and scientists were present, all observing him silently. Captain Kane, the Queen began, her voice calm but commanding, your performance in the recent attack and in the simulations has been impressive. But courage alone does not secure a future. Decisions, loyalty, and wisdom are equally important. Orion nodded. I understand, Your Majesty. I am ready for whatever you require. Seraphine's gaze swept over the room. You will face a series of challenges designed to test your abilities in leadership, strategy, and ethical judgment. Each challenge will reflect potential crises our kingdom could face. You may not always succeed, but your approach, your reasoning, and your adaptability will be under observation. Are you willing? I am, Orion said firmly. I do what I must no matter the odds. The first challenge involved a simulated city under siege by rogue factions. Civilians were in danger, and Orion had to organize defense teams, distribute resources, and plan evacuation routes. Unlike the previous holographic exercises, this simulation included unpredictable variables, communication failures, malfunctioning vehicles, and enemy tactics that changed mid-scenario. Orion analyzed the situation quickly. He identified the most vulnerable areas, prioritized civilian safety, and assigned officers to critical points. When one of the evacuation vehicles broke down, he redirected teams to clear alternate routes. When enemy forces shifted unexpectedly, he adapted his strategy, moving units to create decoys and draw the attackers away from the civilians. Throughout the exercise, Elendran officers watched closely. Many were astonished at Orion's ability to remain calm while constantly adjusting plans. He made decisions that seemed risky but were calculated, balancing speed, efficiency, and safety. At the end of the exercise, the holographic city was largely intact, civilians safe, and enemy forces neutralized. The Queen's eyes gleamed with approval. You demonstrate decisiveness under pressure, Captain Kane. You weigh risks carefully, but you do not hesitate when action is required. Orion bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. I have learned that hesitation can cost lives. The next trial tested his ethical judgment. A simulated dispute had broken out between two colonies on the outskirts of Elendra, each claiming ownership of a resource-rich asteroid. The Queen presented Orion with incomplete information and conflicting reports, forcing him to make a choice that would have far-reaching consequences. Orion listened carefully to the reports, asked questions, and sought patterns in the conflicting data. He weighed the benefits and risks of each option, considering the people's safety, economic stability, and the long-term impact on Elendra's reputation. Finally, he made his decision, proposing a compromise that included shared resource management, a neutral arbitration council, and strict security measures to prevent conflict escalation. The advisors, initially skeptical, were impressed. The Queen leaned forward. You chose a path that avoided unnecessary bloodshed, protected all parties, and ensured fairness. That is the hallmark of both intelligence and humanity, she said. Your ability to consider consequences beyond immediate outcomes is remarkable. Orion's face remained calm, but inside he felt a quiet satisfaction. Human adaptability, combined with empathy, had once again proven valuable. Days passed, and Orion continued to face a series of increasingly complex challenges. He navigated political negotiations with neighboring planets, coordinated defense strategies for simulated attacks, and even participated in tests of endurance and mental agility. Each trial highlighted different aspects of human strength: quick thinking, resilience, moral judgment, and the ability to inspire loyalty in others. The Elendran officers began to notice subtle changes. Where once they doubted humans' capabilities, they now consulted Orion for advice. His ideas were often unconventional, sometimes bold but consistently effective, and with every success, the Queen's interest in him grew. Princess Lyra continued to observe closely. She accompanied Orion during some of the exercises, asking questions and offering her own insights. She was fascinated by how he approached problems differently, blending instinct, creativity, and careful reasoning. She began to understand why her mother valued him so highly, not just as a soldier, but as a mind capable of thinking beyond Elendra's conventions. Humans seem unpredictable, Lyra said one evening as they walked along the palace gardens, but with you, it's different. You're unpredictable in ways that work, not fail, Orion chuckled softly. That's the thing about humans. We survive because we adapt. We observe, plan, and act. Sometimes we take risks, but we try to make those risks count. Lyra smiled, a new respect shining in her eyes. I think I could learn a lot from you, Orion, more than just strategy, about courage and thinking differently. The final challenge came without warning. One morning, the palace alarms sounded, signaling an unexpected intrusion. Alien scouts had breached the outer city perimeter, threatening a nearby trade hub. The Queen ordered Orion to lead a real mission, this time not a simulation. Orion quickly assembled a team of mixed human and Elendran soldiers. Communication was critical, as the alien scouts moved with speed and precision. Orion divided the forces, assigning units to defensive positions, reconnaissance, and tactical strikes. As they approached the hub, the aliens attempted to flank them from multiple directions. Orion stayed calm, directing the Elendran troops with clear commands. He used traps, ambushes, and the terrain to his advantage. The human soldiers under his command followed his lead, inspired by his confidence and decisiveness. At one point, a group of aliens attempted to breach a civilian area. Orion acted immediately, taking a small team to intercept them. He moved swiftly, using his knowledge of alien tactics to anticipate their movements. With careful precision, he neutralized the threat, ensuring the civilians' safety without unnecessary casualties. By the time the battle ended, the alien scouts were defeated or had retreated. Elendran and human forces had worked together seamlessly. The trade hub was intact and no civilians were harmed. The Queen observed the outcome with quiet satisfaction. "You have proven yourself, Captain Kane," she said later in a private audience. "Not only in simulations, but in real situations. You display leadership, intelligence, and loyalty. You inspire confidence and you act decisively when it matters most. Elendra is fortunate to have you here." Orion bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will continue to do what I can for Elendra and its people." Word of Orion's successes spread beyond the palace walls. Elendran citizens began to see humans differently, not as fragile outsiders, but as capable allies. Orion's courage and intelligence became a symbol of hope, proving that humans could rise to challenges even in unfamiliar worlds. Princess Lyra continued to spend time with Orion, learning from him and observing his decisions. Their bond grew stronger, built on mutual respect and shared understanding. Lyra admired his ability to remain calm under pressure, to think strategically, and to act with courage. And Orion, in turn, respected her intelligence, curiosity, and willingness to learn. Queen Seraphine, however, remained the most observant. She had seen Orion's abilities firsthand, and she knew that his potential extended beyond any single mission or test. He represented a new kind of strength, human adaptability combined with courage, loyalty, and insight. As the stars rose above Elendra, casting their light on the city, Orion stood once again in the palace gardens. The challenges had been many, but he had met each one with determination and skill. He had proven that humans were more than survivors. They could be leaders, defenders, and heroes. And the Queen was watching. The morning light on Elendra shimmered against the crystal towers, but the calm was deceptive. While citizens went about their daily lives, preparing for trade and festivals, Queen Seraphine sat in her private chambers with a holographic map of the nearby star systems glowing before her. The recent attacks had been just the beginning. Scouts had reported unusual activity along the outer borders, fleets gathering, signals intercepted, and evidence of coordinated movements from rival planets. "The coalition is forming faster than we expected," the Queen said, her eyes narrowing. "They have grown envious of Elendra's prosperity. If they attack, it will not be a single strike. It will be a war." Orion Kane, standing beside her, observed the map carefully. His mind worked quickly, connecting patterns and predicting possible enemy maneuvers. "How many ships are we talking about?" he asked. "Hundreds," Seraphine replied, "and they are well equipped with technologies comparable to ours. This will not be a small skirmish." Orion's jaw tightened. Humans often faced overwhelming odds, and his training had prepared him for scenarios where the enemy outnumbered and outgunned him. "Then we prepare," he said simply. "We cannot wait for them to strike first." The Queen studied him for a moment. His calmness and decisiveness reminded her of why he had impressed her from the start. "Very well. You will lead an elite team to strengthen Elendra's defenses. Your strategies, instincts, and leadership will be critical." Orion nodded. "Understood. I won't let you down." The next days were filled with preparation. Elendran officers, engineers, and human advisors worked alongside Orion to fortify the planet's defenses. Starships were positioned strategically, energy shields reinforced, and reconnaissance drones sent to track enemy movements. But Orion's approach differed from Elendran methods. He trained his team not just in conventional tactics, but in adaptability and unpredictability. Humans, he explained, survived by thinking differently and using what others overlooked. He devised ambush points, decoy strategies, and rapid response squads that could react to unforeseen situations. Elendran officers were skeptical at first, but as Orion demonstrated each plan, they began to see the logic and the effectiveness of his approach. Princess Lyra often joined Orion during these sessions, observing his methods and asking questions. "Why do you always leave some forces unassigned?" she asked one afternoon. Orion smiled. "Flexibility. The unexpected always happens in battle. If all our forces are committed and something changes, we have nowhere to react. Humans survive by keeping options open." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "I see, you plan for what we cannot see." "Exactly," Orion said. "That's the difference between fighting for survival and just following orders." Finally, the long-expected day arrived. Enemy fleets appeared on the horizon, dark silhouettes moving with precision and speed. Elendra's defenses activated immediately. Energy shields flared, starships moved into position, and the citizens were evacuated to safe zones. Orion took his place aboard the flagship, commanding a mixed squad of human and Elendran soldiers. His eyes scanned the approaching ships. Hundreds of enemy fighters advanced, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. The battle had begun. The aliens struck first, testing Elendra's defenses. Shields held, but energy pulses hit the outer walls, sending tremors through the city. Elendran pilots engaged the enemy, but the attackers were numerous and coordinated, attempting to break through weak points. Orion acted quickly. "Divide into 3 groups," he shouted through the comms. "Group Alpha takes the left flank, Group Beta the right, Group Gamma covers civilians and rapid response. Move fast, adapt, and stay alert." The soldiers responded immediately. Elendran ships moved with precision, guided by Orion's tactical orders. Human fighters, though few in number, proved exceptionally effective. Orion himself led a small squadron into the midst of enemy lines, using speed and unpredictability to outmaneuver larger enemy ships. In the chaos, one of the enemy commanders, a massive alien vessel, targeted the civilian evacuation corridors. Orion didn't hesitate. He diverted a squad to intercept, using calculated risks and clever maneuvers to draw the enemy away. The civilians remained safe, and the aliens were forced to retreat temporarily. The battle raged across Elendra's skies for hours. Orion's strategy emphasized adaptability, forcing the enemy to react rather than dictate. Every time the aliens attempted a new tactic, Orion adjusted, countering with ingenuity and speed. Elendran officers and soldiers began to trust his instincts, realizing that human unpredictability was a critical advantage. During a particularly intense moment, an enemy strike team broke through the outer defenses and targeted the central power grid, threatening to disable the city's energy shields. Orion assessed the situation instantly. "I need a small team to flank them while the main force holds the line," he commanded. He personally led the mission, using narrow city alleys and hidden passageways to reach the enemy position. His team moved with speed and precision, eliminating threats silently and efficiently. Orion's human instincts guided them, predicting enemy movements and exploiting weaknesses that Elendran officers would have overlooked. Within minutes, the strike team was neutralized, and the power grid remained intact. Back on the flagship, Queen Seraphine watched the battle unfold with a mixture of concern and admiration. Orion's strategies were working, and the combined forces of humans and Elendrans were slowly pushing the enemy back. His courage and adaptability were saving lives and maintaining order under extreme pressure. As the day progressed, the alien fleet attempted one final maneuver, a concentrated attack on Elendra's central command tower, where both the Queen and Princess Lyra were located. It was a decisive strike, meant to break the heart of Elendra's defenses. Orion didn't hesitate. "All units focus on intercepting their advance. We hold the tower at all costs." He led a team directly into the path of the attackers, using advanced Elendran ships alongside human maneuvering techniques. Despite being outnumbered, Orion's team exploited weaknesses in the enemy formation, creating openings and confusion. His human intuition, coupled with Elendran technology, allowed them to intercept and neutralize the attack before it could reach the tower. Princess Lyra, watching the battle from the tower, could not hide her amazement. Orion, a human outsider, had protected her and her people again, this time on a massive scale. His courage, intelligence, and adaptability had turned the tide of a battle that could have destroyed Elendra. Finally, as the twin suns began to set, The enemy fleet began to retreat. Orion's strategies had held. Elendra had survived, largely unscathed, and the citizens could begin to rebuild with renewed confidence. In the aftermath, the Queen summoned Orion to the central hall. Her expression was a mixture of relief, respect, and contemplation. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice steady, "you have done what I believed humans could do, but better than I expected. You have led, adapted, and succeeded where others might have failed." Orion bowed respectfully. "I did what I had to, Your Majesty." Elendra's people and the princess were worth protecting. Seraphine's eyes softened slightly. "Yes, they are, and so are you. You have proven not only your skill in battle, but also your loyalty, courage, and ingenuity. Elendra has never had a human like you before, and I suspect we never will again." Orion met her gaze calmly. "Humans are adaptable, courageous, and persistent. We survive because we face what others cannot, and we keep going even when it seems impossible. That's all I am doing here, helping Elendra survive." Princess Lyra approached, her eyes shining with admiration. "Orion, I don't know how to thank you enough. You've saved so many lives, not just mine. You've saved Elendra." Orion smiled faintly. "No thanks needed, Princess. Just stay safe and keep believing that people can rise to challenges, even when it seems impossible." That evening, as Elendra celebrated its survival, citizens and soldiers alike spoke of Orion Kane, the human who had turned the tide of battle. Elendrans who once doubted humans now regarded them with respect. Orion's courage, intelligence, and adaptability had demonstrated that humans were more than outsiders. They could be allies, leaders, and heroes in a galaxy filled with danger. Queen Seraphine, meanwhile, considered the future carefully. Orion was no ordinary soldier. His abilities, his approach, and his loyalty had proven invaluable. He was more than a protector. He was a symbol of the strength and potential of humanity. As the twin suns set and stars appeared above Elendra, Orion stood once again in the palace gardens. The battle was won, but he knew the galaxy was vast, filled with challenges yet to come. Humans had survived for centuries because they adapted, because they fought when others hesitated, and because they refused to give up. And Elendra, thanks to Orion Kane, had witnessed that truth firsthand. The morning after the great battle, Elendra awoke to a city alive with celebration. Flags fluttered in the wind, markets reopened, and children ran through the streets, their laughter echoing across the crystal towers. Citizens filled the squares, praising the soldiers who had defended their homes, and the name Orion Kane was on everyone's lips. Yet for Orion there was no celebration, no fanfare. He moved quietly through the city, observing the aftermath of the battle. Buildings had been damaged, but Elendra had survived. Civilians were safe. That, to him, was victory enough. Princess Lyra ran to meet him in the courtyard, her face alight with gratitude. "Orion, the people are calling you a hero," she said, almost breathless with excitement. "They can't stop talking about you." Orion smiled faintly. "I only did what was needed, Princess." The soldiers, the citizens, they all played their part. I just happened to be where I was most needed. Lyra shook her head, her expression serious. "You did more than that. You saved lives, including mine. Without you, Elendra might not exist today." Orion's eyes met hers. "Humans survive by facing danger, Princess. That's what I do, and I'm glad I could help." Word of Orion's deeds had reached the Royal Council. Elendran officers who once doubted his abilities now praised his ingenuity, leadership, and courage. The Queen summoned him to the palace for an official audience. As Orion entered the Grand Hall, the atmosphere was heavy with respect and anticipation. Queen Seraphine rose from her throne, her eyes meeting his with steady intensity. "Captain Kane," she began, her voice calm but commanding, "you have proven yourself beyond what anyone could have imagined. You have faced impossible odds, led our forces with intelligence and courage, and defended Elendra with unwavering loyalty. Today, you are more than a soldier. You are a symbol of what humans can achieve." Orion bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what was necessary to protect Elendra and its people." The Queen studied him closely. "That is precisely why I am granting you an honor reserved for the most trusted of allies. You will serve as an advisor and protector to the royal family, a position that carries responsibility, respect, and the trust of Elendra itself." Orion's brow furrowed slightly. "I am honored, Your Majesty. I will do my best to serve." Seraphine nodded, a rare smile touching her lips. "I know you will. Humans are often underestimated, yet you have shown qualities that few possess: courage, adaptability, and unwavering loyalty. Elendra is fortunate to have you. Outside the palace, the citizens had gathered to celebrate. Music filled the streets and children waved flags. Soldiers marched in formation, showing respect for their human ally. Orion walked among them briefly, acknowledging their cheers but keeping his composure. He had learned long ago that heroism was not about glory, but about action and responsibility. Princess Lyra joined him once more, her eyes reflecting the excitement of the people. "Orion," she said softly, "I want you to know that you've changed the way I see humans. Before I thought of them as fragile and weak, but now I see strength, courage, and wisdom." Orion smiled faintly. "Humans are capable of much more than people believe, Princess. Sometimes it takes a crisis for that to become clear." Lyra nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "I hope Elendra will continue to learn from you and from humans like you." The following weeks were filled with reconstruction and preparation. Elendra's buildings were repaired, trade routes reopened, and the city returned to its usual rhythm. Orion continued to serve as advisor, assisting in defense planning, strategic negotiations, and training exercises. His presence brought a new level of confidence to the Elendran forces, and his methods, blending human adaptability with Elendran technology, became standard practice. One day, the Queen requested a private audience with Orion. In her chambers, she regarded him carefully. "Captain Kane, you have proven that humans are more than survivors. You are leaders, thinkers, and warriors capable of facing the greatest threats. Your presence has strengthened Elendra immeasurably." Orion nodded respectfully. "I am glad to help, Your Majesty." Humans have always survived by adapting, by working together, and by facing challenges without fear. I am happy to bring that to Elendra. Seraphine's eyes softened. "I believe you have done more than strengthen our defenses. You have inspired our people." They now see that courage and loyalty are not limited by species. That, Captain Kane, is a gift that goes beyond battle. Princess Lyra often joined Orion in the palace gardens, observing the city, the soldiers, and the people. She had learned much from him, not just strategy, but resilience, observation, and adaptability. She began applying these lessons in her own duties, guiding her advisors with fresh insight and confidence. "Humans have a way of thinking differently," she said one afternoon as they walked among the flowering trees. "They see possibilities others overlook, and Orion, you've shown me that courage is not just physical but mental and emotional as well." Orion smiled faintly. "That is true, Princess. Courage often means making decisions when others hesitate, adapting when things go wrong, and never giving up, even when the odds are against you." Lyra looked at him, admiration shining in her eyes. "I hope Elendra will continue to have humans as allies." "I think our worlds can achieve much together," Orion nodded. "Humans will always stand where they are needed, Princess. We survive, we adapt, and we rise to challenges, and we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." In the months that followed, Elendra flourished. Trade expanded, alliances strengthened, and the city's reputation as a center of innovation and courage grew. Orion's influence extended beyond military strategy. He advised on diplomacy, resource management, and even cultural exchanges between humans and Elendrans. His methods, while unconventional, proved effective, and Elendrans began to appreciate the value of human adaptability and ingenuity. Queen Seraphine continued to watch him closely. She understood that Orion represented more than one human. He symbolized the untapped potential of humanity. Elendra had gained not just a protector, but a partner, someone whose insight and courage could guide them through future challenges. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky with brilliant hues, the Queen called Orion to the observation deck. Together, they watched the city sparkle below. "You have done more than protect my daughter and my city," Seraphine said softly. "You have changed the way Elendra sees humans. You have earned our trust, respect, and gratitude. That is a rare accomplishment, Captain Kane." Orion looked out over the city, his expression calm but thoughtful. "I only did what humans do best, Your Majesty. We survive, adapt, and rise to challenges. Elendra's people inspired me as well. Together, we accomplished this." The Queen nodded. "Yes, together. And that is the lesson Elendra and perhaps the galaxy must learn. Humans are not just capable of surviving. They are capable of greatness." As the stars appeared above Elendra, Orion stood beside the princess and the Queen. He had been a soldier, a defender, and a human outsider. Yet now he was more than that. He was a symbol of courage, adaptability, and loyalty. He had shown that humans, often underestimated, could rise to meet challenges beyond imagination. Princess Lyra placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. Orion, thank you for everything. You've shown me that humans are not just strong in body, but in mind and spirit as well. Orion nodded humbly. I am glad to help, Princess. That is what humans do. We fight, we adapt, and we protect those who need us. Queen Seraphine observed silently, her expression thoughtful but approving. She knew that Elendra had gained more than a hero. They had gained a trusted ally, someone whose courage and wisdom would guide them for years to come. And as Orion looked out over the city, the people, and the stars beyond, he felt a quiet satisfaction. Humans had survived countless challenges throughout history, often underestimated, often overlooked, but always rising to the occasion. On Elendra, they had done it again. The city glowed in the night, safe and alive, and humanity's place in the galaxy had been firmly recognized. Orion Kane had defended a princess, faced overwhelming odds, and proven that humans were not just survivors. They were leaders, protectors, and heroes capable of shaping the future. And Elendra would never forget it.